So right now, I'm going to bring out Pastor Chris, and he's going to go over the baptisms that occurred just recently. And the floor is yours, sir. He also said he has to talk every Sunday, so.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I scheduled myself in because I'm not preaching today, so I said, hey, guys, I have to talk in the mic every Sunday. It's kind of written in my contract, so let's get up and talk about something. But no, seriously, last week we had baptism, and we were going to baptize 5 people, and I'm really excited. You're going to hear from them in just a second, and we're going to show the video of what happened last week, which is really, really awesome and exciting, and so I can't wait to experience that with you also. I did want to just briefly mention this, and we won't have time today to talk about it, but in your own time today and throughout this week, could you remember those that have been hit by the Hurricane Matthew coming up the coast this week? It was very devastating for Florida, for Georgia, South Carolina. All of those states got hit pretty hard. I have some cousins that live in the north side of South Carolina, right by south of the border, if you guys know where that is, Pedro's place, you know. You never saw such a place. They're about 60 miles, 70 miles inland, and they lost power. Their place was flooded, so I can only imagine what the coast looks like. So if you could, just remember to be praying for everyone in those states. I actually was talking to someone earlier, Roy, who's putting on a fundraiser this week at his gym. Hopefully Epic can be a part of that, and you'll see more on that on the social media, so you can check that out. If you're not a fan of Facebook, go like it or be on the newsletter. A lot of information comes through those areas, and so if we're a part of it, you can jump in and join in there. So don't forget to be praying for those people. But as I had mentioned, last week we had baptism in the hotel pool, and how we do it here at Epic, because it's very difficult to get a pool into this room or to get everybody from this room down to the pool. We do them kind of in separate occasions, and so last week before service, a group of us met down at the hotel pool on the first floor down that way. And we got a chance to baptize each of them, and it was very significant for all 5 of those individuals. And we had someone captured on video, and we're going to show it to you today. And right after the video, each of those 5 people are going to come up on stage, and they're going to get a chance to share their story about who they were before Christ and who they are now because of Him. So I want to ask you to turn your attention to the screen and check out this video.
I stand before you now. The greatness of your renown. I have heard of the majesty and wonder of you, King of heaven. In humility I bow as your for you are for us. You are not against.
Someone ask all of them to come on up, all of us that are here, because put our hands together and welcome as they come up to the stage to share this morning. Come on up, guys. Line up here. Awesome. Wasn't that awesome just to see and be a part of? Man, that's why we do what we do, right? That's it. So.
I feel like I should stand over there now.
Yeah. Mike was very pleasant to me, and you saw him kneel in the pool, and even kneel to give me a hug. I felt so patronized. He's like, here you go. I'm sure. So I asked each of them to think about a few answers to just a few questions, and the first is just to recognize anyone that is present that they'd like to thank for bringing them to church or introduce them to Christ, and then their story also, like past, present, and future, who they were before Jesus and who they are now because of him. And that's the beauty of baptism, is it represents that old life being buried and coming up resurrected, brand new. And that's why the church say, I've come to life, because that's what we do. That's why the church exists, until all have come to life in Christ and experienced that resurrection in them. And so, Mike, first I'll start with you. Is there anyone that you would like to recognize for bringing you to church, introducing you to Christ, or just in general that you'd like to recognize this morning?
My wife, first of all. We've had a challenging year, and that's part of what got us to this point, or got me. I'll say us, it's a team. And then our leader of our small group, Kimmy, I don't know if she's here or not. I didn't see her earlier, but she first introduced my wife to Epic when you guys were at Two Burns, and I know she's been praying for us this whole time and kind of hoping this would all happen, and it did, not in the manner in which we thought it would, but maybe in the manner in which it should. So for me, my story, I'll try to keep it simple. Just never really believed. Never was a doubter. I questioned. I looked for answers everywhere, I guess I'll say, maybe but here. And so, coming here and going through what we went through in the past year, for me now, finding Christ is kind of a resetting of my compass, and kind of trying to, find my place in the world and orientate myself and my family for the greatest possible chance of success and joy and happiness, really.
Thank you. Amen. This is Samantha, and Samantha, I'll ask you to answer the same.
I got here through several of my friends, none of which are here. They're scattered across a few states, but have just gradually guided me here, and I thank God for doing that, because it was both intentionally and unintentionally. So I'm very grateful for that. And before I found Christ, I went to church a little bit growing up, but never was a big church goer. Always curious, but I was at a point in my life, a few years out of school, I'd been working for a little bit, and was just super anxious, super just restless, and felt like there had to be something more. This couldn't just be it, go home, go to work, and that be it. And I had a friend ask me to go to this church that she went to, and she wasn't a big church person, so I figured if she was into it, it was probably worth checking out. And that was the start of my journey. And since then, I won't say that all of those anxious feelings or worries or anything are gone, but I have such a comfort and sense of calm in my life that I didn't have before. And it's so comforting to know that, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but there's a plan, and he's in control. He's got a plan, and it is no doubt far better than anything I could come up with. So and all I have to do is follow his lead, so that's not so hard to do.
Thank you.
already tearing up, guys. Forgive me. So I want to thank my husband, Matt, for bringing me to church. When I first started going, it was just to support him because Christianity wasn't for me. I had pretty bad experiences with Christianity growing up, as I think a lot of us have had that, really crazy family member or something who maybe alienated some people. So I didn't sing, I didn't say the prayers, I just sat, and slowly over time, I think God sort of started to soften my heart. And the first time I sang, I allowed myself to sing in church and just was really overcome with emotion, and it was a scary thing to allow myself to feel that after believing for so long that Christianity was only for crazy people. And I'm like, oh God, now I'm one of those crazy people. But yeah. So throughout that journey, I realized that my whole life I've been totally self-focused, believing that, it's all about, life is about how you can make yourself happy and what you can do, self-love and self-care, and looking for my sense of self-worth out of my career or the opinions of other people. And since after Christ, I've learned that I'm unconditionally loved and accepted and forgiven, and my self-worth comes from the love of God and not from anything that I can find in this world. So I'm very grateful for that, and grateful for Pastor Chris and Lori for helping me on the journey as well.
Hi, my name is Corinne, and I've been saved for a long time, but over the past couple years I've become a wanderer. I was discontent, actually. Instead of letting my heart grow softer and softer, I let it grow hard. And I started disbelieving God had a good plan for me. And so I started wandering and looking in all kinds of places. I don't know what for. Something that I felt was missing. But it was only because I'd grown far away from him. So I got baptized last week for the second time. Because to me it's a new start. It's a new lease on life. It's as if, well, in reality, that all my sins are gone. And then I came up from that water, fresh and new, ready to start again. He's always called me to do that. It didn't need to take 2 years, that's for sure. But in my stubbornness, I took that long. I would like to thank Chris and Lori and Miss Edith. They've always stood beside me. They've always accepted me. They've always loved me unconditionally. And you know what? That made all the difference. Because my family shunned me. And it's hard to come back when you're not accepted. But they did love me and accept me. And I'm thankful for that.
I just want to thank my dad for bringing me to Epic. And I'm only 11, so I don't have a big story. But I was really iffy to go to church, but like when I came to Epic, I really liked it. And all the people were really nice and kind and cool.
I know I'm not preaching this morning, but here comes a mini sermon. If you haven't given Christ a chance in your heart, you hear these stories And none of these are prompted by me, and they're not scripted. And some of you guys know their stories and where they came from. Man, if you haven't given Christ a chance to reset your compass, or to give you that peace and calm in anxious moments, or to be a part of the crazy group like Emily, or a new lease on life, I mean, this is what Jesus is all about. If you haven't given him an opportunity, don't let today end without opening your heart to him, because this is all for Christ's glory. This has nothing to do with Epic and us, because we're just vessels. This is all because of him and how amazing he is. Man, so don't let today pass. Don't let this opportunity go. Before this service ends today, open your heart to him. Even now, you don't have to say anything specific. You just talk to him and say, God, I want to reset. I want to know you. I want to come to life in you like they have. And I guarantee you, God says it's guaranteed, you will become brand new, a brand new creation. It will happen right here, right now. So one last time, can we put our hands together for all these individuals? Thank you, guys. Good job. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Wow. I was back there just tearing up a little bit, just to be able, just to hear transformation occur in people's lives from death to life. They had a chance to experience Jesus. And if it wasn't for Pastor Chris and Pastor Lori, they wouldn't have had a chance. Not to say that God wouldn't have worked in other areas and brought them along and for them to experience Christ in a different way, but because of Pastor Chris and Lori taking a stand on being cool, as the young girl said, being fun and being able just to feel like she's a part, is really what Pastor Chris and Lori's vision is about. And it's just exciting to see transformation happen in the lives this morning. So I get the privilege to share a little bit about Lori and my friendship with her, just to let you guys know. I've known her all my life. My sister and her were best friends growing up. And so she basically tortured me like a sister growing up, just to let you all know that. Picking on me and, not letting me go and hang out with the big girls, stay home, you're not cool enough, we don't want you around, blah, blah, blah. So, and then also, I remember when I received Christ, around 17, 18 years old, and I was radically saved, and preaching the gospel, just sharing my testimony. And Lori was over my sister's or my mom's house, but hanging out with my sister. And I said, Lori, you got to give your heart and life over to the Lord. Just to let you guys know, if you guys didn't know, Lori was a true OG, a true original gangster. And she lets you know that too, rolling up in her Toyota 4Runner, brand new, pimped out. So as she was over and I had a chance to share with her just my experience with the Lord, she looked at me, she goes, well, Billy, when I get saved and I give my heart to the Lord, I'm going to have a bigger ministry and I'm going to do bigger things and I'm going to have better things. She just started just sharing all these things. I was like, well, praise the Lord, I hope so. And it wasn't too long where Lori gave her heart to the Lord and was radically saved. And from there, she was a youth pastor and touched hundreds of kids' lives. And she continues to touch hundreds of kids' lives. So just a personal experience with Lori. When I went through my divorce, I was in a whirlwind and didn't know where to turn, didn't know, how to manage and how to, forgive, because there was just so much going on in my heart. And I remembered like it was yesterday. She just looked at me, and this might not mean anything to you. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, it was meant for me. But she looked at me, she goes, Billy, you know how you forgive? And I said, I'm really trying. I was like, because I want to forgive her. And she said, you forgive the way, how you forgive is live your life like it never had an effect on you, the divorce. And when I heard that, it was just so inspirational. Like, I can be free from the pain if I want to. And I can let go of whatever has happened to me. So out of that conversation, it just began my healing process. And Lori, I just can't tell you how much you have meant to me, not just as a friend, but as a sister in the Lord. And to be able to get a chance to see the lives that you continue to impact, you and Pastor Chris, is just so inspirational. You know, a year ago, she posted something on Facebook this past week of starting her chemotherapy. And, you know, when she was sharing that, she wasn't thinking of herself. She was thinking of how I can impact others, how I can motivate others. Wherever God's going to lead me, I'm just going to love people where they're at, even in my pain, even in my suffering. What? I'm like, man, this girl is truly God sent and is truly an angel living among us. Not to put her on a pedestal by no means. Obviously, it's Christ through her that allows her to live this way. But I cannot tell you enough how much you've influenced me and impacted me as a friend and as a sister. And as pastors, they don't get a chance to hear these types of things. So I just am so honored to be able to stand in front of you and be able to share how you've impacted me in Honduras just a couple weeks ago, as she just got over chemo and she's still getting vitamins pumped in. She's up at 1 o'clock in the morning pushing us. Hey, we got kids to really impact, and she's just constantly loving. So within this moment, Lori, I want you to feel the love that we always felt from you. And I truly love you and appreciate you so much. Can we give her a round? Thank you. She continues to life coach me and help me. So anyway. So next, I'm going to invite Cal out to share some just experience with his friendship with Pastor Chris. Thanks, Cal.
Thanks, Billy. Good morning, everybody. As Billy said, I'm Cal Renner. It's a pleasure to be up here speaking this morning. It's also a little bit intimidating trying to fit this into a time frame, talking about my friendship with Pastor Chris. So when I was going over this and preparing for this week, I kept coming back to the same verse over and over again. There were a couple that I thought could work for this, but I kept coming back to the same verse, and it's Proverbs 18:24. And in it, the New Living Translation puts it best. It says, there are friends, and friends is in quotation marks, who will destroy each other, but true friends stick closer than a brother. And if you've been in church any length of time, or if you grew up in a church like I did, you've probably heard that verse before. It's usually described when we're talking about Jesus and what he means to us. So I think Pastor Chris does an amazing job of modeling that exact behavior, being literally, for me, actually, sticking closer than a brother. So I had a couple illustrations that I was going to share this morning, and I was trying to figure out which one was the best one to share to talk about my experience with Pastor Chris as a friend. I could share the one where he spent 2 hours on a drive down to Virginia with me and Jeremy Penry, answering philosophical and theological questions, rapid fire, like, hey, are there unicorns in the Bible? Hey, what does this mean? What does this mean? And he's just like, yeah, man, let's do this. But that's too long, so I picked a different one, and it's my favorite Pastor Chris story that I have, and it starts back in 2009. So I first met Pastor Chris in 2009. A friend of mine invited me to the Dew Burns Arena after a snowstorm because I couldn't get my car out. I was going to another church at the time, but he invited me to come down and check out Dew Burns. So this was during Pastor Chris's chin strap, beard, half-dyed faux hawk messenger boy cap phase. Does anybody remember that? Seriously, dude, what were you, like the fifth Backstreet Boy? Like, what? Oh, there are 5 Backstreet Boys. Oh, he would know that. Sorry, dude. No, but so I remember meeting him briefly. Seemed like a nice guy, but then we parted ways, and I went back to the church that I was going to at the time. Flash forward 5 years later, and me and my fiance at that time, Chelsea, were in a really bad spot. We had been hanging out with some of those friends that Proverbs talks about that destroy each other, and our relationship with each other and our relationship with God was pretty close to self-destruction. So we decided, as a Hail Mary, we're going to show up. Let's try a new church. We stopped going to the church that we've been going to because nobody knew us there. So we're like, hey, let's try a new church. So we show up to Epic that Sunday morning, and Pastor Chris, as I hear so many people testify, seemed like he was preaching directly to me. And he, of course, had a sermon about redemption, which I don't know if you've ever felt the weight and the dirt and the filth of sin covering you, but the sermon that you need to hear at that point is one of redemption. And Pastor Chris had a great sermon that Sunday. So I'm feeling great. Me and my fiance, we look at each other. This is great. I think this is the place. So we're walking out. We're standing in line like he does every Sunday here to shake people's hands. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give him the best line ever. Everybody know what the best line ever is to give to the pastor that's waiting there, right? Great sermon. Right, exactly. Great sermon. I think I may have even done that. Like I go up there and I'm like, he's going to really enjoy this. Great sermon, Pastor. He's like, great. Hey, you're Callum, right? I said, what? You're Callum, right? Yeah, you remember me? Yeah, man. How you been? Great to have you here. Glad to see you again. Hadn't seen this guy for 6 years. He remembered my name, full name. There's so many biblical parallels of calling me by my name that I could use here, but I don't have the time to do that. But that impact immediately showed me what type of friend this guy is. Flash forward another month later, I'm having to make some tough decisions as to whether or not to continue my relationship with my fiance or to just break it off completely. I searched for answers from all of my friends. I've probably asked 100 people to give me advice on what I should do, and I got 100 different answers. So I come to Pastor Chris, and I say, Pastor Chris, and this is all over Facebook message, which is, I apologize in advance for doing that. Like, dude, that's the worst place to ask serious questions. Like, hey, what's God's will for me to do in this at this time? Like, that's exactly what, okay, well, let me type you up a 3.5-page paragraph what you should do according to God's will. And he's got like the inside track because he's a pastor, right? He knows God's will better than anybody else. So ironically, he was teaching a sermon series at that time about God's will. So he's like, well, let me just refer you back to what I said this past Sunday in case you don't remember, where sometimes you're not going to get a black and white answer in the scriptures. You're not going to open up the Bible and say, okay, this is what you should do. You should continue your relationship or you should break it off. So he said, but sometimes you have to go out there and you have to trust that God's going to bless your steps. And he said, you know what, dude, whatever you choose, whatever you decide, I'm here to support you. I love you. I care about you. Ironically, during this time, so I decided at that point, all right, I'm going to work on my relationship with my fiance. Ironically, at this time, one of my actual brothers chose not to speak to me because of that decision that I made. He didn't talk to me for 9 months, but Pastor Chris here literally stuck closer than a brother in that situation and said, I will support you, and met with me and talked with me whenever I needed to and had questions about it. So 16 months later, standing at the altar with my now wife, this guy got to marry me. And it was just the absolute coolest. That doesn't even scratch the surface for what his friendship to me means, but I'm so thankful for you. Thank you so much for everything you continue to do. I'm so excited to see what our friendship brings for the next several years. I love you. All right, we got Kate coming up next to talk some more about Pastor Lori.
So I was asked to talk about Pastor Lori and her as a leader. And I just think the biggest thing a leader can do is lead by example. And Pastor Chris and Pastor Lori are the best examples to all of us of how to live a Christ-like life. They give us examples of how to love each other, how to encourage each other. And I'm just grateful for Lori in my life and how she's been a mentor to me. You know, Jesus, he was the ultimate leader. He was the one that by example showed us how to live. And he gave us the Great Commission of go into the nations and make disciples of all nations and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, Lori, she has lived out that in her life. She goes out into the nations, and God's called her so many different places. But she not only does it there, she does it here. She makes disciples of all of us. She is constantly, the way her vulnerability is, she opens up and she's transparent about her struggles and what she's going through. And that allows us to realize that, you know, they're not perfect. They're human just like us. And that, you know, if they can get through it through God's power, then we can too. So I'm grateful for that example that she's been. And it's amazing to me how when I first came to church 6 years ago, Pastor Chris, I remember coming up to him at the end of a service one day, and I was just in tears, and he's like, you know what, let me introduce you to my wife. And I didn't realize that day how much meeting Lori was going to change my life. I mean, I went from coming to a place of complete brokenness, and she shared with me her testimony and how God worked through the abuse of her past and just, you know, the mess, and brought her out into this amazing place where she gets to minister to others and love on others. And it gave me hope. And I'm grateful for that, because for me it was also to see that God can heal from the past abuse. And that was something that, it was all of a sudden a turning point in my life when I realized that God could use what was in my past that was horrible, messed up, and use it for good. So I'm grateful for her example in that. I'm also grateful for her example. I got to go out a couple months ago with her, and we were shopping. And I couldn't believe that when we were out, all of a sudden, strangers would come up and just start talking to us and just bare their lives. I mean, I'm just sitting there like my jaw dropped. Like, I couldn't believe these people are sharing so much stuff. And, you know, it was a God thing. God obviously put something on her heart to go talk to her. And she's like, you know what, well, can we pray with you? And it happened. The whole day just kept happening. I looked at her the other day. I'm like, is this your normal day? And she's like, yeah, pretty much. It's just people come up, they talk, we pray. And, you know, so it's not like it's a Sunday thing, or it's not a Sunday night thing as she leads to youth. It's an everyday thing that she gives her life to help others and love others. And I'm just grateful for the example that she is as a woman in ministry, because when I came in, I could never stand up on a stage and talk in front of people. And God, he definitely put me here at Epic for a reason. And I think it was 100%, Lori was the big reason, because I grew up in a Catholic church where there's priests, and I could never imagine being in any type of ministry, being able to get up and speak, and that God actually had a plan for me. But Lori, through the past 6 years, has mentored me, has brought me out and, you know, given me opportunities to serve, to minister to others. And I am now have become a licensed minister myself, but it's all because of her. It's because of her example. So I just want to encourage also the women here, just get to know Lori. If you haven't yet, get to know her and realize the amazing thing that God's doing in her life, and that just as he did it in her life, he wants to do it in your life too. So Lori, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the example you are as a woman of God, a woman who gives up her life to completely live for others, to bring them to the Lord. So we just thank you. I love you. And now I want to invite Patrick up. Patrick's going to come talk about Pastor Chris.
Hello, everybody. Let me put this Bible over here. All right. So I'm going to talk about Pastor Chris and how he's been a leader to me personally, how his leadership has affected me on a personal level. And I'm sure a lot of you will be able to resonate with this. The very first time that I can remember meeting Pastor Chris, I was about, I think, 13, 14 years old. And I think it might have been before Epic started as a church. I think you guys were youth leaders, right? And they had all the youth over their house. And Brandon Howard's my best friend, and he was going to that youth group. And I joined him that day. Little did I know, I'd be going to the hospital. So they had this slip and slide on the side of the house. And if you guys remember what it's like to go, down a slip and slide, you're a little anxious. And there was a lot of girls there, so you want to impress them. You want to do something cool. You want to, surf move or something, on the way down. And Pastor Chris was in front of me, and he had went down the slip and slide. And it's my turn, and I rear up, and I run, and I slide down the slip and slide. And it was almost like slow motion. I felt the water kind of coming over me like a wave, and I just picture myself slow motion whipping my hair back with just like this cheesy grin, just going down the slip and slide. Then all of a sudden, boom, I hit something, and I hit it really, really hard. It ended up being Pastor Chris's elbow to the back of my skull, and I get up, and I'm holding my head, And he looks up, he's like, you all right? Are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, man, I think I'm fine. And I pull my hand down, and there's blood all over it. And there's blood all running down the slip and slide. They probably had to throw the slip and slide away. He rushes me inside. He takes a bunch of towels out of his closet, and he's sopping up the blood on my head. And that was the first time he knocked some sense into me. Right? I practiced that so many times. Over the years, that was the very first time I really got to see Pastor Chris as a leader, the way that he cared for me. See, that day, he was the shepherd of the flock. I was part of that flock. And when I got hurt, he took me and he cared for me. And that was the very first time I got to see his leadership at work in my life. And it's only grown since then, in the years, since I've known him. And I've had a lot of chances to sit down and talk with Pastor Chris, kind of open up to him and tell him what's going on with my life. And he's been able to pour into me spiritually. This past year, I wanted to go into real estate full time, and I was part time, and I really wanted to do it. But I had a huge fear of failure. I had a fear that I wasn't going to succeed. It was scary to switch careers completely, and I was freaking out, and because I really felt like I was called to do it. And I asked Pastor Chris, can you please sit down and have some lunch with me and just and talk with me and let me kind of, vomit just a bunch of stuff on top of you, and you can just feed into me. And he did that, and he looked at me and he said, you know what? You could fail. You could definitely fail. But you could also definitely succeed. But you never know unless you try, unless you go do it. And it was like a light switch kind of flipped in my head, and I'm like, yeah, you're completely right. The way that he spoke into my life that day completely changed. That week, I quit my job, and I started real estate full time. Put my 3 weeks in, and that never would have happened, I think, if his spiritual guidance and input over my life, if he didn't give me that. Being an MC, I get to see a lot of behind the scenes, and I see a lot of the things that Pastor Chris has to juggle from day to day, and even though he has so much going on, even in his personal life and everything else, he still gets up here on stage every single week, and you pour your heart out to us. And all the preparation and all the praying and everything, it comes out on the stage, and it affects each and every one of us. The way that you lead us, we are your flock now. And you are like our shepherd up here, and you lead us in the spiritual connection that you have with each and every one of us. I think we all feel it. I know I feel it. The way that you're a spiritual leader in your home, and you lead your wife, you're a godly husband, and you're an example for your daughter. It makes me want to be a better husband. It makes me want to be a leader to the people that I can lead and pour out spiritually in the people that I can pour out spiritually into. So thank you, Pastor Chris. I want to read this verse real quick. I didn't want the Bible in my hands I wanted to talk with my hands today. It's 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 2. It says, "Here is a trustworthy saying. If anyone sets his heart on being an overseer, he desires a noble task. Now the overseer must be above reproach, the husband of but one wife," beautiful Pastor Lori, "temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, and able to teach." And when I was researching and I read this verse, I think you exemplify every part of that verse. And I want to thank you. So thank you very much. I'm going to have Robin and Dan come out now let's give him a round of applause for his leadership. I'm sorry about that.
Hey guys, look who I got out here with me. It's exciting, right? So we're the last team to come out and be able to talk about Pastor Chris and Lori and the influence that they've had on our lives. And we get the privilege of talking about them as a couple, together as a great team, a team that puts God at the center of everything that they do. And as we were preparing for today, we pulled up 2 verses that we want to share with you. And the first one is out of Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes 4:12 says, "A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer." 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Love that verse. Well, I was thinking like sword fighters back to back, fending off the bad guys. But it's so true, and that's something that I think really strong couples emulate and exemplify is that ability to watch each other's back, strengthen each other, protect each other, lift each other up, and carry each other's burdens. Two strong strands together are indeed strong, but when you add the third braid, of course, which is Christ, you now have a cord that is not easily broken and can overcome many obstacles. And as we know, there's been no shortage of obstacles in this journey for you two, and I truly wish and pray for a double portion of blessing upon you, because you've had a triple portion of burden. So there's actually a concept in Christian marriage philosophy that's called the naked marriage. And it sort of goes back to Adam and Eve in the garden, before the serpent and the apple and the shame. And it's where a husband and wife stand together, shameless, open, and bearing all to each other and to God. And I think that's another thing that Chris and Lori exemplify in an amazing way for us, because we know about the burdens that they've suffered, because they share each and every one of them with us. They invite us into the most intimate details of their life and invite us to be a part of that and to share the burden with them. And I think that it's James 4:8 that says when we draw close to God, He draws close to us, and that's what they do for us. Is they draw near to us by opening up and being totally vulnerable and just asking for our grace and love, and by doing so, we then draw near to them. And now you have a fourth strand in that cord, a strong couple wrapped in the strength, love, and mission of Christ, and coupled with a strong community of believers and people that love you. And we're just so grateful and thankful for that example that you set for us. And that is really why Epic is here today. It's an amazing, it's a miracle. It really is. We overcome so much, and we're so happy to be a part of it.
It's very true. The other verse that we wanted to share was 2 Corinthians 9:13. As a result of your ministry, they will give glory to God, for your generosity to them and to all believers will prove that you are obedient to the good news of Christ. We are just so thankful to have you in our lives, to be an example to all of us. I mean, I know only a few of us got to come up on stage this morning and speak, but I know that you're working in every single person's life in this room, and that our stories aren't unique. And if this is your first time, welcome. You're in a great place, and you have amazing pastors who are going to shepherd you through this life. And you are just an amazing example of what a Christ-centered relationship is, and we are so proud to call you our pastors. So we'd like to bring you guys back up on stage. We have some gifts for you. And we're going to wrap it up with having the communicators come all back out as a team. Do, 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 do. Come up here. Awesome. You guys want to come up here in the middle? So over the last couple weeks, we've been collecting your notes for Pastor Chris and Pastor Lori out front. And if you haven't had a chance, we're going to steal the book back from them so you can put some notes before you leave today. But we have a book. Where'd that book go? To present to you. Just from everybody, we all have stories of how you've affected our lives. And so we've been able to collect those. And you can hear personally from each person in the audience and a part of your the church today. And then we also have some flowers and just a little gift from the church to say thank you for all your service, all your hard work, and we love you. Right, guys? You want to say?
Thank you. Now you guys are all standing. You're making me nervous now. God. Just first of all, a big thank you to all the words that were said this morning. It means a lot. Thank you for the cards that you've sent and written. Thank you for just your show of appreciation this morning. Yesterday, I killed my phone. I got it wet, and it's dead. Anybody ever struggle with that? Yeah, so it's like you could have cut off my left arm, and I would have been fine. But my phone it's devastating, and so I haven't been able to be connected to anything or anyone. Our house is kind of in disarray, and so I know Lori's trying to get a hold of me, and it's just been a mess. So I can't get texts or phone calls, and so I'm driving into church this morning and wanting to text Josh and see how things are going at church, and I can't connect to anything and anyone, and so there was this kind of a void in my heart that I couldn't connect to other people. And being a preacher, I always kind of extrapolate that out into the larger spiritual sense, and I started to think, man, I wonder what it would be like to not be able to connect to a community like a church. And I know the feeling of that disconnection between people, but I thought, man, every Sunday I get to come in and connect with you guys. And there's something amazing that happens when a church goes just from a group of people to a community, and from a community to a family. And I think that's what this connection is a connection of a family, like brothers and sisters in Christ. And we get to love with each other. We get to serve each other. I get to know you and be known by you. I get to serve you and be served by you. I get to love you and be loved by you. And that's what a family really is. And a family has dysfunction, absolutely. And there's no shortage of dysfunction in this family. Unfortunately, or fortunately for you, Patrick is the only one that I've split their head open with my arm. That small bit of dysfunction is just, that was reserved for Patrick. That's why I can stand on the stage and not be ashamed and say that, I want Epic to grow, because there's people outside this room that don't have this connection. And that's why I'm not ashamed to encourage you to invite your friends and family, because I know what this family means to me. I know what this connection means to me. And there's people outside of this building that don't have it. That's why a couple weeks ago I was sharing vision about planting other Epic churches in other communities. And that's why I'm not ashamed to say that, because there are other communities of people that don't have this family-like connection that they can call a church. And so I can stand up here unashamedly and say, I want Epic to grow, and I want there to be campuses all across our city, because there's people that need this family-like connection that's centered around Christ, not people and individuals, but around the cross of Christ. And so thank you for being that connection for Lori and I. Thank you for lifting us up. That these past few years have been extremely difficult and pushed us to our limits. Thank you for giving us grace to not be superhumans while we've gone through this, or even any time. Even if I'm not stressed, don't expect me to be superhuman. I asked Cal to not share our text messages back and forth during the Oriole season, because it's been not pastoral. There's been some moments in there. I'm not perfect. Lori's not perfect. We aren't. And so thank you for not expecting us to be perfect. And so thank you for the love and the support that you've expressed to us. And Lori, would you like to share something? Hand it to her.
I just want to just thank everybody just for standing with me through the 2-year battle with cancer, and through my chemo, and even through now, like all the side effects. And I know I posted that I have the blood clot in my lung right now, and just going through all this other kind of stuff with my headaches and the side effects of chemo. You guys have really been a family to us. You guys have loved us. Just the text messages or the calls, or the food people drop by. Like, just some days are just so hard when you're dealing with physical stuff, and just to know that there's a family. I know all I have to do is pick up the phone, and so I just feel like I'm on the other end of everything right now, that I've just been able to receive the love from this body, and it's just been so amazing. And thank you for loving us. I mean, it's been a hard 2 years on our life and our marriage and everything, and even like just supporting my mom since she's lost her sight. And as some of you guys know, we're just getting ready to move her from upstairs to downstairs, and our house is in disarray, which means have you ever remodeled, anybody in here? You know what it means and how crazy it is. But people have just loved us through everything. So I just want to thank you guys, and I look forward to what God's going to do. And then the next locations, like Pastor Chris said, we'll love to open, and just what he's doing, seeing all the leaders rise up. And we love you guys, and we appreciate you guys. Thank you for loving us.